Today on Locked On Red Wings, will we and should we see more Sebastian Cossa?
You're Locked On Red Wings, your daily podcast on the Detroit Red Wings. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome back to the Locked On Red Wings podcast. We are your hosts, Brian Fisher and Scotty Bentley. Scotty is the host over at Locked On Tigers, as well as a freelance journalist for the Detroit News, while I am a color commentator for Oakland University, ACHA D1 Hockey. Scotty, happy Wednesday, hump day finally. And I think we're gonna carry on some Sebastian Cossa hype into this episode because, I mean, what else with this team is really worth talking about right now? So we're gonna continue some of that excitement and conversation we had yesterday. Man, listen, they're like almost dead last in the East, but also somehow 4 points out of a wild card.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I was like, I don't know, dead last in the East, not too far out of a playoff spot there, bud.
Isn't that insane? The Canadiens, I think, are 4 points out, and they're dead last. This conference is so top heavy right now, and so bottom heavy. There's no middle.
The best.
Yeah. Before we get to that, I got to let you guys know today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. New customers can place a $5 bet, and you'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Scotty, yeah, like I said, we're just going to carry on some of the Sebastian Cossa vibes. With the practice lines coming out later today, we'll know for sure, but I just want to ask while we still have the ability to theorize. Well, we still have the ability to theorize. When it comes to Sebastian Cossa and starting against the Philadelphia Flyers on Thursday, will he and should he get the start, or do you see them going right back to Ville Husso?
Yeah, we talked about it a little bit yesterday, but we said we were going to go more in depth today. I think, man, I think this is probably the first one where big picture kind of strategy conversation we've had this year where I genuinely think that what the team is going to do is different from what I want to happen. We've gone back and forth and kind of bounced ideas off each other or disagreed on certain roster moves up to this point in the season. And I've kind of been in the same headspace as what I think the organization is going to do or what they end up doing. And that's not to say I haven't been wrong. I've been wrong plenty, but I think
more often
that,
than not.
Right, exactly. But I think this is the first time where what I want and what I think are actually split. This is one where I think the Wings are just going to go back to Husso. But I think after what we saw on Monday, I think it is the perfect opportunity to throw Cossa back out there. I don't really know if there's a perfect answer or if there is a kind of a slam dunk opinion here and just a bona fide correct way to go about it. But I think that the team will probably go to Husso. We talk about all the time, just financially, they have the most invested in him this season, but also they really do objectively need Husso to be solid if they want to navigate their way, even have a chance of navigating their way through Talbot and Lyon being hurt. So I think they're going to go back to Husso and they're going to try to, he had 2 days off and only played one period on Monday and had a day off on Sunday. So he hasn't played much lately. I think they probably just go back to the well there, but I want them to. Holy cow. Max Fried just signed a $220 million contract with the Yankees. Sorry. Wild. Winter meetings. So I just am my phone is blowing up 24/7. But I would like them to ride the wave of momentum with Cossa because I think that would, I don't think it's any longer you have to choose between development and winning. We just saw what Husso is capable of in a negative way and what Cossa is capable of as well. And he can be out there for a win. And I think that's kind of all the confidence you need to send him back out there in my eyes.
Yeah. And so This is one of those, I'm going to take the same stance that I initially took going into the game against the Buffalo Sabres. I think this should be a Sebastian Cossa start. So again, we're kind of on opposite sides of this opinion. You ended up being right last time. They started with Hossa, combining their names. They started with Husso.
I'm so down. You want you want Marion Hossa out here?
Yeah, let's go. I think last time you said Husso. I think it sounds like you're leaning Husso again this time, and the logic is sound. Like, I understand it. You're 100% spot on. It is imperative that they get Husso's confidence back under him, and he played 3 straight solid games with the Detroit Red Wings. They did not get the win with him in net, but he was good in all 3 of those games. They tried to stretch it to a 4th. They're trying to see, because with this 2-day break, there was the possibility they might not need to go to Cossa, which is, I don't know, it goes against what they've been saying. They say they have full confidence in Cossa, but the fact that they haven't played him, I don't know, seems to speak otherwise. It felt like they were trying to stretch Husso until they got Talbot or Lyon back.
Right.
But with Husso having played a poor game and the team having looked energized, and again, I don't know if those are correlating. I don't know if those correlate, right? The team getting energized when Cossa comes in. That could have just been coincidence, or it could have been because Cossa got into net. With Lalonde's track record being he usually runs the goalie that got the win. You remember last year where James Reimer and Ville Husso, not Ville Husso, but even Alex Lyon, after he was off that incredibly hot streak, were having rough games, and he would just go back to the goalie that had a rough game just because they won with him in net. Like, Lalonde has a track record of just riding not even the hot hand, but the winning hand, even if the winning hand didn't play that well. Not saying Cossa didn't, but I'm just saying that they won with Cossa in net. So I actually could see them going back. Again, that big wrench is that 2 days off. If it was just 1 day off, I would say absolutely slam dunk Cossa. But with the 2 days off, I could see them going back to Husso. Now, obviously, what I want is Sebastian Cossa. And I'm going to go and lean towards Sebastian Cossa because of that hot hand situation. That's still going to be my deciding factor. The team seemed to play better in front of Cossa, and I think it is important to get him NHL reps if he's going to be up here because, practice is great. Having him play with the NHL team in practice is fantastic, but nothing is ever going to compare to live game reps. So I think if he's going to be up here and you just won with him in a net, in a dramatic fashion, in a shootout, run it back with Sebastian Cossa. Of course, this entire conversation then becomes moot, Scotty, if in this 2-day break, because again, I think that was part of the reason why they stretched Husso a 4th game. If in this 2-day break, Talbot or Lyon then become available. Because if either of those two then become available, well, then Cossa back down to the minors. Because that's just the easiest play. You're at a 23-man roster right now. Lyon is on IR. Now, if Lyon doesn't come off IR and it's Talbot, you could hypothetically keep Cossa, but for what point at that point? At that point, what's the point? Send him down to the Grand Rapids Griffins so he can get more game reps. But if either of those two goalies come back, this whole conversation is moot, and he's going back to the AHL because he doesn't have to go through waivers. And he's going to get more consistent play, a lot more consistent playing time down there. Well, he'll be the guy. Yeah, being said, it's just I'm leaning more towards Cossa right now if those guys don't come back because we're kind of working under the assumption they're not returning.
Right, and that's the assumption. Like that who knows? Like that's what this entire conversation kind of revolves around. Because the second that they're healthy, Cossa is almost certainly getting sent back down. I guess that transitions us into the next conversation, though, which is there a way he can play well enough to stick around?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. He'll have to get it. First, it starts with getting the start, right? Getting a start in Philly and then playing well in Philly. But I don't think one good start is enough for him to have earned his way to staying on the roster with 3 NHL goalies on the roster already. Like, he'll have to, it will require the juggling of Talbot and Lyon being out a little bit longer than we're expecting, Cossa playing really well in Philly to stack that into another game after that. And he'll have to stack, like, in my opinion, 3 or 4 good games in a row for that conversation to really pick up steam. Because it's just, when it comes to the NHL roster, a lot of the times they're going to just do what is easiest and going to cause the least amount of headaches. Husso getting waived early in the season, he cleared easily because of his cap and the fact that he hadn't played really at all in the last season. But now he's played a few games. There's not, I think it's a stretch to say he wouldn't clear waivers. I think he still would at 4.75, but there are teams out there that still need goalies. Like we just saw Colorado Avalanche trade away both their goalies in the last week and a half to get a couple more. Like now there might be a little bit more of a conversation. And that's another thing too. You could trade away a goalie, but I think it would have to be a situation where Cossa gets the start in Philly, plays really well to stack a few starts on one another and have Talbot and Lyons still be out and injured for that stretch as well.
Right.
It'd have to be a very niche situation.
I agree. I think the original point you had to start off that was probably the best one, which is just the path of least resistance right now is just for him to, and we say that because it's true. And like the path of least resistance would just be to send Cossa back down. But it's also, I mean, again, we're talking about playing time. Look at the playing time he's gotten, right? He hasn't really, he's played 2 periods of hockey and he's been up here for a week. Like he hasn't even played a full 3 periods yet in the NHL. So just from, how each goalie that's on the roster is going to be used, I think it's pretty self-explanatory that he would go back down.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay. We're going to do a quick break when we return. One last question about the Cossa situation would be, if he does stick around, what do you do with the rest of the goalies? So stay tuned to segment 2 of Locked On Red Wings. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check on the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. Just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if your first $5 bet wins. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Don't do it. Don't do it. Segment 2.
The NFL.
Segment 2, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Scotty, so obviously we're getting ahead of ourselves in this conversation, right? Off-day conversation, so we're having a little bit of fun. We're working on a hypothesis here that Cossa not only gets the start in Philly, but plays really well to then earn himself multiple starts. All the while, the goaltending in Talbot and Lyons stays hurt, right? Lyons on the IR, Talbot's not, but he's still battling through, I think, an upper body issue. If all those 3 boxes are checked, and Cossa has now played himself into staying on the NHL roster, who do you send down? Or rather, trade away even, in order to free up a roster spot for him to stay here full time? Because then you would have 4 goalies on your NHL roster once Lyon comes off IR.
How is it not a goalie? I want to start there.
It's got to be.
Right. Is there any scenario where it's not a goaltender? No.
It has to be.
Right? So we can start with that. So we really narrow the focus here pretty much immediately to just other goaltenders. I think the dream scenario, the perfect world scenario with sunshine and butterflies and rainbows flying around. Rainbows don't fly, but you get my point, is that you find a trade partner for Cam Talbot. I think that's the dream scenario here. It's not a long-term deal. He's under contract this year, the rest of this year and next year. He's getting up there in age. He has way overperformed what we all expected out of him so far this season. Lyon is cheap and is off the books after this season. I can't imagine you get too terribly much for him. Husso, I mean, we can talk about Husso if you think that that's the direction they go, but that seems like more of a cut or wave than a trade situation, unless you're willing to eat all of the money, which I'm not sure the Wings would be willing to do. So I think, well, I guess Husso's contract's done at the end of the year too. I just really think that the best value in that conversation would be trading Talbot, he has probably the most trade value among your goaltending room at the present moment, and it opens the door for the most Cossa playing time as well.
Yeah, so I actually completely disagree with you on that one. That's rare where we disagree. I think you got to keep Talbot. It's just simply because in the perfect world, right, where Cossa, this is another great season for him in Grand Rapids, like assuming he doesn't stick around, or even if he does stick around, you're going to need a second goaltender. And Talbot's under contract for one more year after this. At the start of the season, we were saying that would set you up perfectly to have Talbot be your veteran goaltender to help shelter Cossa in his first year in the NHL, where they split starts and Cossa gets his bearings. That way, when Kossa's rough and needs a couple days off to reset himself, you have a veteran goalie in Cam Talbot who's been fantastic. You're right. He has completely outperformed our expectations on a team that plays much worse defense than the LA Kings did last year. But with Husso and Talbot, and I mean Husso and Lyon rather, and I understand like you can go out there and sign another veteran goalie in the offseason, that would be fine. But with Talbot being already on your roster and his contract being not that much, $2.5 million, I don't see him being the guy you would target. I think the easiest guy to trade if you want to maximize positive value in return would be Alex Lyon. I mean, Alex Lyon is 1 year left on a $900,000 contract, assuming, he'll get healthy soon, right? And this isn't an LTIR situation and he's really hurt because, sometimes they're hush-hush on these injury things, but indications point that he'll be back sooner rather than later. I mean, Alex Lyon is a cheap goalie who's, like Talbot, kind of outperforming our expectations and has been the last 2 years. He's been streaky, sure, but more often than not, he's been better than he has been worse. So, and there are a lot of goalies, a lot of teams in this league that are in need of a semi-consistent goalie. I know that the Colorado Avalanche kind of just addressed their needs, but we've talked in the past about other teams in this league that are desperate for decent goaltending. So, you look at the situation, and Alex Lyon makes the most sense and is easiest to move. Ville Husso, if you want to just offload a contract and you don't mind retaining, I think you could move Husso. 50% retained. You have all three of your salary cap retention spots. You do 50% retained. You get a cheap pick back in return. His contract's off the book at the end of the years anyways, and you give him a fresh start. I think that's ideal for the Red Wings. Moving Husso is the ideal situation for the Red Wings because this is a goalie they want to get going. They want to build confidence, but you already have a crowded goalie room. Now, if Kossa's pushing his way into the picture in this perfect scenario, you really have an odd man out. And it's honestly just Ville Husso. But I understand there's a difference between what's ideal for the Red Wings and what other teams are going to want. That's why, in my opinion, if the Red Wings can do it, you move Ville Husso. But if you want to maximize your return, you do Alex Lyon. And then you can keep Sebastian Cossa up, and you can have Jack Campbell in the minors with either Gylander or Gage Alexander as the backup. So I think that that's probably the easiest route for the Red Wings to take because I just don't think that you want to give up on Cam Talbot because of the fact that he's playing so well and you want him to be on the roster next year when theoretically Cossa would be here full-time, without a doubt.
I will make you a bet right now that if we get to the trade deadline and the Wings are completely out of the playoff picture, we 100% do an entire episode dedicated to possible trade scenarios for Cam Talbot. I assure you that is happening.
Oh, I mean, I'm sure we'll talk about it.
Yeah, because rentals also are far cheaper than far lesser return than players with a year and a half left. And as you just said, the goalie market is very, very hot at the present moment. We just saw the Avalanche just traded for a goalie, right? People
Twice.
Are already right. Like there are already goalie trades that are happening. We just saw New York give out one of the biggest contract ever by a goaltender. Like the market for having good goaltending is very, very hot, which means that you should strike while the iron is hot and give up your best asset that also is not a long-term asset for this hockey team. And you should go into, and again, like as you said, there's going to be, 30 goalies available again next summer. And you can go find another 1 year deal, which is what Talbot will be after this season, to go get like a stopgap veteran goalie. Look, like he has way overperformed. That's awesome. And I hope that I mean, best case scenario is the Wings just turn it around, and he's like a big reason as to why. But if you're actually if you're actually considering clearing out space in the goalie room, I have no clue why you would not start with the guy that is pushing 40 and has significantly overachieved expectations and is the longest tenure or longest contract goalie on the team. It's still a year and a half. Like, I think you're not going to get much for a backup on a rental, which is what Alex Lyon is. He's got a backup goalie for a good team, and it's a rental contract. And you're certainly not going to get a lot for Ville Husso, which you would have to eat money for. If you're just looking to clear a roster space, then you're right. And they'll just do the Husso thing. If it's just purely we need a roster space open, then you're absolutely correct. If you're actually looking to get something in return, then it is 100% Talbot. And there's really, I don't think there's any conversation about it.
Yeah, and I mean, I think the flip side of that conversation, what I would counter back with is a lot of teams at trade deadlines are looking for rentals, and they're not looking for a player to be on their books past their playoff push. And so, especially for a goaltender who's 37, going to be 38 by the time the next season starts. Remember, he turned 37 a day after he signed the contract with the Detroit Red Wings. So he'll be 38 by the time the next year starts.
Yep.
I don't know if there's many teams that would want a goaltender on their books past their playoff push.
Really? You don't
at 38 years old? No, I think that would give there.
Okay,
there are.
So
I'm saying that
no, you don't. I agree with you. So why would the Red Wings?
Because we're in a different position than a lot of these teams are pushing for the playoffs.
That's my point. Like, exactly. Why are we upset? Why are we like, yes, we must have a 38-year-old on the team next year that we didn't even expect to be this good. And by the way, we're only 3 months into the season. Like, he has way more of the contract left than he has played. This is the best his value will be, is my point. This is the highest Cam Talbot's value will be in his entire Red Wings tenure. And if you have any inclination of moving him, it makes sense to do it sooner rather than later.
No, that's fair. Like, and I'm not trying to say you're wrong. I mean, you are, but I'm not trying to say it. No, but for real, like, it's very viable. Like all three of these go. Well, first of all, here's the thing: we're talking about a very, very, very low percentage hypothetical right now. Like, we're talking about check boxes upon check boxes upon check boxes being checked.
Yeah, this won't happen now.
Right.
I think this is more of a conversation that'll, again, like I said earlier, come back up when the trade deadline comes around involving Talbot specifically. But will he replace Cossa? Like, that's not happening.
Right. And like,
or will Cossa replace
at the end of the day, like, the reality is if and once Talbot and Lyon come back, there is a 99% chance Sebastian Cossa gets sent back down, because that is the path of least resistance.
That is what will happen. Right.
You're not going to carry Sebastian Cossa on this roster with two other NHL goaltenders.
Right.
So even if you were to waive Husso and Husso were to get cleared, you're not going to carry Cossa on this lineup because it does not benefit his development. Yeah. So, like, the only way this happens is if he earns his keep and proves that he needs to be here, and you run two goalies and he's getting at least 50% of the starts. That is really hard to imagine. This is an off-day conversation that is fun.
Happen.
Right. At the end of the day, we were having a fun off-day conversation.
But
99% chance.
Again, I do. Right. This won't happen this week. Like that. This is a put a pin in it conversation. I do think that this conversation will come back up around the trade deadline, though. Like that's where it'll be like, okay, if you can trade Talbot, get something decent in return, and call up Cossa, that sounds like a very, very beneficial thing for the Red Wings to do at the trade deadline this year. But on December 11th, I agree with you.
That's a great point, too, because if you're selling at the deadline, you're giving up on the season. So at that point, why not call up Cossa and let him get NHL reps, move on from 2-year goaltenders, and try to maximize your return? That is a very good point. But right now on December 10th or 11th, by the time you're listening to this, it's a moot point. Will he start tomorrow, though? Maybe. I hope so.
Maybe. Yeah, I would prefer, but I think because we know that he is going to be the one that's sent down, I think they probably just go back to Husso.
And that's a very fair argument, and I can't disagree with it. I think it could go either way.
What I would want to see, but it's probably the reality. That's most
All
of the
right.
season so far. Not what I want to see, but reality. That's
Right.
really kind of the headline of the year so far for this team. So.
That's also what I say when I look in the mirror every morning. Anyways, we're going to be going to segment 3 when we return. We'll talk very quickly about Joe Veleno. We don't have a ton to talk about him.
I love
a
your
ton of
ball
time to
tag,
talk about
Brian. It's okay.
Thanks, buddy. Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings, coming up. Today's episode is sponsored by Prize Picks. If you love sports, you're going to love Prize Picks, the best place to turn your sports knowledge into real money. Whether it's hockey, football, or any of your favorite sports, Prize Picks makes it easy to get in on the action. Here's why you do need to get started today. You can win up to 200 times your money on Prize Picks. Get $50 instantly when you play your first $5 lineup. No need to win. The $50 is guaranteed. Prize Picks also offers fun weekly promotions like Taco Tuesday, where select player projections are discounted up to 25%. This week on Prize Picks, I'm eyeing the hockey board, specifically the Detroit Red Wings. Alex DeBrincat's been shooting the puck a lot, Scotty. He tends to do so, but I don't know if you've been noticing. He had like 5 shots the other day. So I would definitely take at least Alex DeBrincat to get 3 shots in any given game. It's so simple to make my picks and have fun with friends while potentially cashing out fast. Download the app today and use code LOCKDOWNNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. That's right, $50 instantly. Prize Picks, run your game.
No, you.
Segment 3, Locked On Red Wings podcast. Sean, if you're listening, I'm very sorry about the late break. Please don't get mad at us. Scotty, Joe Veleno is kind of being pushed down the depth chart with the Detroit Red Wings. He's even been healthy scratched a few times this season. Not recently. I think the last time was like 2 weeks ago, unless I'm misremembering. But his impact on the ice has been not so good. And he's on that, fresh 2-year contract where he's getting paid, I think, like 2.7. I'm trying to find it right here in front of my face. Yeah, $2.275 million per year, which at the time we defended. We were like, that's fair value for a fourth-line center in this market. Well, his usage has tanked, and his production has also tanked. So far this season, I believe he is averaging like 2 minutes less a game than he was last year. He's only got 2 points through 25 games. Last year, he had 28 across the entire season. He's not trending well. And part of that, of course, is the fact that he's getting decreased usage, but also, part of the reason he's getting decreased usage is he's having less of an impact on the ice. So the question becomes, is Joe Veleno being pushed out?
I don't know, man. Genuinely, I'm so tired of trying to figure out where he fits into this team. We've been doing it nonstop for 2.5 years. He first got called up and everybody was obviously excited, and then he kind of plateaued, and we were very harsh on him at the end of the 22-23 season. And then last year, he took a step in the right direction, and we were like, oh, never mind. This Joe Veleno is really solid, and he was a pretty valuable part of the team and whatnot. And then now we're right back down to where we were. It's been such an up and down kind of roller coaster of the last, like I said, 2.5, 3 seasons for him. I mean, some of it, he's playing wing a little bit more because with Marco Kasper up, they're set up the middle with 4 centers. So, and I was a huge advocate for that back at the beginning of the season. I was a huge advocate for, hey, move him to the wing. He's got speed. Maybe they can get a little bit more point production out of him. He had 2 good games and then disappeared. And I don't know. Legitimately, it's good center depth to have. If a center does get hurt, then you just bump everybody up one, and Veleno can slide in at 4C, and that's obviously something you want. You want center depth always, but on the day-to-day, I don't know. I'm so perplexed by his trajectory of his career at this point.
I think it's just, I think he is what he is. And I think we knew that going into the season. I think the contract that he got signed to was not a prove-it deal, but more of a this is what you are deal. He was given, I think he had a 1-year deal this last year. He had a decent season, right? Career high in points, 28 points in 80 games. That was a career high, 20 points in 81 the year before.
Yeah.
He even got a lot of looks at second-line center when Dylan Larkin was out a few times. But this year, Marco Kasper, 6th overall pick, has bursted onto the scenes, and he looks like the second best center on the Detroit Red Wings. Now, Andrew Kopp hasn't looked great, so Andrew Kopp's gotten minutes at wing, so that's why they're kind of cycling between both of those guys playing wing versus center. But with the emergence of Marco Kasper, the reduced role of Joe Veleno was kind of all but predicted, right? His time on the ice per game has gone from 13:57 last year, which is a career high, to 11 minutes and 2 seconds. His Corsi for percentage is 18th on the league at 5, or 18th on the team at 5-on-5. In the league would be a fantastic. And his expected goals for percentage just 17th on the team. And below him is like guys like Austin Watson, so you can't really count him. There are a couple guys on this team you really can't count, like Oli Mata, who's at 7th. Can't really count him. He's only played 7 games. Austin Watson's at 22nd. He only played 2. And he's averaging the least amount of time on the ice, total time on the ice at 5-on-5, out of any player with more than 16 games played. And I'm using 16 games as the barometer because guys like, Albert Johansson have only played 15. So I'm trying to weed out the guys who are in and out of the lineup on a nightly basis because he's a regular player on this team despite a couple of healthy scratches. So out of the regulars in this lineup, he averages the least amount of ice time. And part of that's because his impact on the ice has just been really reduced. And so I think we're at this point now where for Joe Veleno, it's either I prove my worth as a winger in the bottom 6 or I'm going to be finding myself on another team very quickly. And I don't want that to happen. Because again, like you said, this is a Joe Veleno that we were pumped about. And last year, at times, we were calling him Joey Poison. He had a 50, he'd have games where he would win 55% of his faceoffs. He has speed. He has decent hands, and he's a hard forechecker. But it feels like we haven't seen that. And now I'm not saying it's 100% of his fault either. This has been a weird season. This entire team has regressed, and he's shooting 5% right now, Scott. He's got 20 shots. His shooting percentage is 5%. That is crazy low. So I do think there is more in him than what we have seen, and some of that is finding a fourth line that he has chemistry on, and some of that's on, again, coaching, because there's a lot of players on this team that are underperforming. It's not just a Joe Veleno problem. He's just a player we decided to talk about in today's game. Or today's episode. We talked about talking about JT Compher, more about Patrick Kane. There's so many players we could have picked to talk about. So it's not just a Joe Veleno problem. This is a team-wide problem. But the problem is with Marco Kasper up here and Nate Danielson probably not that far behind. Guys like Carter Mazur, who probably would have pushed for the roster had he not gotten hurt sooner rather than later. Joe Veleno is going to quickly find a little bit of sweat. So I don't know. I'm rooting for Joe Veleno because I want him to work out because I think he's got a lot of potential. The whole exceptional status rather, he had in juniors, but he just been an underwhelming year for him, much like it has been for a lot of other players.
Yeah. Again, you can copy and paste that, like you said, throughout a lot of the roster this year, unfortunately.
Yeah. All right. Anything else?
We ball.
We'll be back with a new episode tomorrow. Probably. I think we're planning on talking about the top pair, some more positive highlights of the top pair and just how dominant they are. But that, of course, is always subject to change given any, roster shakeups that may happen.
Right.
Practice line should come out, so we should have a better look at what we're looking at with Philadelphia. And if Cossa's playing, then we'll probably dedicate more time to that. So stay tuned for that. Same time, same place. It's your team every day.